The rain hammered the fire escape like 1,000 tiny accusations, each drop a reminder of the storm I'd ignored for too long. Frankie's hand trembled in mine, slick with the downpour we'd run through. But it was her eyes, those green depths cracked open like fault lines, that shattered me first. "Jordan," she whispered, voice breaking on my name like glass underfoot. "If you leave now, you'll take the last piece of me with you." I froze in the doorway of our Brooklyn walk-up, the kind of place where the walls whispered secrets back to you if you listened too hard. The air smelled of wet concrete and the jasmine candle we'd lit last night, back when pretending felt easier than truth. My heart, that stubborn muscle, clenched around the lie I'd been building brick by brick, that I could walk away from her, from us, without bleeding out on the stoop below. Brooklyn in the fall was a cruel kind of beautiful, all amber leaves skittering across sidewalks like forgotten promises, the East River churning gray under skies that promised sun but delivered sleet instead. I'd met Frankie 3 years ago at a poetry slam in a basement bar off Bedford Avenue, the kind of spot where the air was thick with cheap wine and cheaper dreams. She was up on the makeshift stage, all fire and freckles, reciting a piece about the hollow ache of loving someone who loved you back in fragments. Her voice wrapped around the room like smoke, pulling confessions from strangers. And when her eyes locked on mine in the crowd, me, slouched in the back row nursing a bourbon neat, I felt seen in a way that scared the hell out of me. I'm Jordan Hayes, 28, a graphic designer by day who freelanced just enough to keep the lights on in my tiny studio, and by night, a woman who ran from anything that felt like home. Raised in the projects of Southside Chicago, where love was a luxury you couldn't afford if you were too busy dodging bullets or bills, I'd learned early that attachments were just chains disguised as comfort. My mama used to say, "Baby girl, the heart's a fool, but it's got good intentions," right before she'd light another cigarette and stare out the window at nothing. She died when I was 16, lungs black as the coal dust from her factory shifts, leaving me with a duffel bag and a bus ticket to anywhere but there. New York swallowed me whole, spat me out sharper, but no less guarded. I dated men in college, quick, meaningless flings that checked boxes without cracking open the safe. It wasn't until a rainy night in my senior year seminar, dissecting Audre Lorde's essays on the erotic as power, that something shifted. The professor, a soft-spoken dyke with silver streaks in her braids, caught me lingering after class, my notebook filled with underlines that trembled like confessions. "The body's honest, Jordan," she'd said, her hand brushing mine just long enough to ignite a spark I couldn't name. That was my awakening. Messy and private, a secret I buried under hoodies and bravado. Frankie unraveled me without even trying. Francesca Francomelli, 27, a barista/aspiring novelist from a sprawling Irish Catholic family in Boston, the kind that gathered for Sunday roasts and whispered about the family black sheep over mashed potatoes. She had that effortless charm, laugh lines already etching her cheeks, a tattoo of a half-read book on her wrist that she'd gotten on a dare in undergrad. We bonded over shared shifts at the slam, her readings raw and bleeding, mine sparse and jagged, like shards of obsidian. One night, after the crowd thinned and the MC called last call, she slid onto the stool next to me, her knee brushing mine under the bar. "You're Jordan, right? The one who writes about ghosts that look like regrets." Her smile was lopsided, teasing, but her eyes held a hunger that mirrored my own. I shrugged, tracing the rim of my glass. "And you're the girl who makes heartbreak sound like a haiku. Dangerous talent." We talked until the bartender flipped the chairs, words tumbling like dominoes, her dreams of publishing that manuscript she'd been nursing since community college, my sketches of cityscapes that hid faces in the shadows. By dawn, we were walking the Williamsburg Bridge, her arm looped through mine, the Hudson glittering below like it approved. That was our first almost kiss, swallowed by the wind, but the pull was there, magnetic and terrifying. We fell into each other slowly, The way autumn creeps into summer, picnics in Prospect Park with her reading passages from her novel aloud, me sketching her profile against the oaks, leaves turning gold like her hair in the light. Our first real kiss happened in a laundromat off Atlantic Avenue, the dryers humming a lullaby as thunder rattled the windows. She tasted like chamomile tea and possibility, her hands fisting my shirt as if I'd vanish if she let go. I've wanted this since that first night, she murmured against my lips. And I believed her because in her arms, the ghosts quieted. Living together came next. Inevitable as the rent hikes that forced us from separate shoeboxes into that Brooklyn walk-up. It was a third-floor railroad apartment, creaky floors and a kitchenette where we burned toast and made love on the counter. Mornings were her domain, sunlight spilling through the blinds as she hummed Sinatra off-key, pouring coffee black for me, sweet and milky for herself. I'd watch her from the doorway, towel-drying my curls, marveling at how someone so soft could anchor me so fiercely. But love, American style, doesn't come without its undercurrents, the kind that drag you under if you're not careful. Frankie had her shadows. A family that loved her in theory but recoiled at the truth of her. Mom called last week, she'd say, voice tight as she chopped onions for stir-fry. Asked when I'd settle down with a nice boy. I told her about you. And she went silent. Like I'd said I'd joined a cult. I'd pull her close, kiss the salt from her lashes, whisper that blood don't always mean family. Mine had taught me that. My own demons were quieter, more insidious. The freelance gigs dried up after a bad client review tanked my portfolio site. Some corporate asshole who'd wanted edgier designs but cried foul when they didn't match his vision of edgy. Bills piled like snowdrifts. And the doubt crept in. Who was I to build a life when I could barely keep one afloat? Nights when Frankie slept, I'd slip out to the fire escape, chain-smoking menthols, staring at the skyline where the Empire State Building blinked like a distant heartbeat. What if I wasn't enough? What if loving her meant dooming her to my instability? The first crack appeared in February. Valentine's Day turned casualty. I'd planned a surprise. Tickets to a off-Broadway show about queer icons. Dinner at that Italian spot in Carroll Gardens where the tiramisu melted like sin. But the day unraveled. My laptop crashed mid-revision for a potential client. The subway stalled in a tunnel for 40 minutes. And by the time I stumbled home, Frankie was curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that faraway look. Babe. I dropped the roses on the table, wilted from my sweaty grip. What's wrong? She looked up, eyes red-rimmed. My agent passed on the manuscript. Said it's too introspective for the market. To me. Basically. I sank beside her, pulling her into my lap. Fuck them. It's brilliant. You're brilliant. But her silence stretched, heavy as the snow piling outside. That night, we made love fiercely. Bodies a battlefield of need and reassurance. But the seed was planted, resentment. Not at each other, but at the world that chipped away at our edges. Spring brought a fragile bloom. Frankie landed a gig ghostwriting for a lifestyle blog. Her words ghosting through someone else's byline. But it paid the electric bill. I scored a contract designing album covers for an indie label in Bushwick. Late nights in my corner of the living room. Stylus flying over the tablet as beats thumped from her headphones. We'd celebrate small. Take out from the halal cart on the corner. Feeding each other falafel under the string lights we'd hung crookedly on the balcony. It was during one of those nights, sprawled on a blanket in McCarran Park, fireworks popping lazy over the pool, that she first said the words that would haunt us. Jordan, what if we got out of here? Not forever, just a road trip. See the country. Write about it. Make it ours. I laughed, nuzzling her neck. You, me, and a beat-up Honda? Sounds like a country song waiting to happen. Her eyes sparkled, serious beneath the mischief. I'm serious. We could start in the Smokies, chase the blues through Nashville, End up in New Orleans where the jazz feels like home. I kissed her to seal it, but the idea lodged in my chest like a hook. Freedom tasted sweet, but fear soured it. Leaving meant risking the fragile nest we'd built, the jobs that tethered us, the city that, for all its grind, knew our shapes. Summer scorched in, humid and unrelenting, turning our apartment into a sweatbox. That's when the betrayal slithered in, uninvited and venomous. It started with a name, Riley. Frankie's old college roommate. A photographer with a trust fund and a jawline that could cut glass. They'd been thick as thieves back at Emerson, Riley. The golden girl with a Nikon always slung around her neck. Frankie. The dreamer scribbling in margins. Platonic as hell, Frankie swore when Riley texted out of the blue, inviting her to a gallery opening in Soho. Come with? It'll be fun. I begged off, buried in deadlines, but the knot in my gut twisted anyway. That night, she came home late, cheeks flushed from rose, babbling about Riley's shots of abandoned motels in the Southwest. You'd love her work, Jord. It's got that same raw edge as your sketches. The next week, it was coffee to catch up. Then a weekend shoot in the Hamptons where Frankie tagged along as moral support. Photos flooded her Instagram. Riley mid-laugh, arms slung around Frankie's shoulders, the two of them silhouetted against dunes, wind whipping their hair like lovers in a perfume ad. Comments poured in. You two are magic. Couple goals. And each one was a splinter under my skin. I confronted her over cold Thai delivery, the living room lit by the flicker of a muted Netflix rom-com. What's going on with you and Riley? Frankie blinked, fork pausing midair. What? Nothing. She's just an old friend. Looks like more than that online. My voice cracked, sharper than intended. She set her plate down, eyes narrowing. Jealous? Of Riley? Jord. Come on. You know me. But did I? The doubt festered. Nights when she'd step out for inspiration walks and return with that glow I hadn't sparked in months. I threw myself into work, sketching feverishly, but the lines blurred, faces morphing into Riley's smirk, Frankie's hand slipping from mine. The breaking point came in August, a heat wave that turned the city into a pressure cooker. I came home early from a client meeting canceled by a blackout, the streets humming with generators and short tempers. Our door was ajar, laughter spilling out like smoke. Frankie's, light and unguarded, mingled with Riley's low drawl. Pushed in, heart slamming like a bass drop. There they were on our couch, knees touching. Riley's camera balanced on her lap as Frankie leaned in, pointing at the screen. The air smelled of her citrus perfume, the one I'd bought her last Christmas. Jordan. Frankie's surprise was genuine, but it stung like deceit. You're home early. Riley stood, all easy grace, extending a hand. Hey, I'm really. Frankie's told me so much. I ignored it. Eyes locked on Frankie. What's this? Just going over shots. Riley's heading to LA next month, wants feedback for her pitch. Frankie's words tumbled. Defensive. Riley gathered her things, sensing the storm. I'll bounce. Great meeting you. Jordan. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving a vacuum. Frankie rounded on me. What the hell? You stormin' like I'm cheating. Are you? The words escaped before I could cage them. Raw and ugly. Her face crumpled, then hardened. No. But if you think that little of me, maybe we need to talk about trust. We did. All night, voices rising over the whir of a box fan, accusations flying like shrapnel. She admitted the pull. Riley's world of grants and galleries, the validation Frankie craved when her novel gathered dust. It's not about her, Jord. It's about feeling seen in a way I haven't here. And me? Am I invisible? Tears burned, hot as the asphalt outside. We made up in the dark, bodies colliding in desperate apology. But the fracture lingered, a hairline crack widening with every aftershock. Autumn returned, leaves turning traitor red, mirroring the bleed in our veins. Frankie pulled away, subtle at first, nights typing furiously on her laptop, doors closed against my knock. Whispers on calls I pretended not to hear. Yeah, Riley. I miss that energy too. I drowned in it. Picking up extra shifts at a coffee shop. The steam and chatter a numb buffer. Friends noticed. Maya from the slam circuit cornered me in a dive bar, her braids swinging like pendulums. Girl, you look like death warmed over. What's Frankie done now? Nothing, I lied. Sipping my whiskey sour. Just life. Maya snorted. Life don't hollow you out like that. Talk to her, Jord, before it's too late. But talking felt like begging. And I'd sworn off that after Chicago. Instead, I packed a bag one rainy Tuesday, the kind that soaks through to the bone. Left a note on the fridge. Need space to breathe. Love you. G. I crashed at Maya's in Bed-Stuy. The spare room a closet with a futon. Walls papered in old concert posters. Days blurred into design mocks for faceless clients. Nights into bars where the jukebox played Patsy Cline and I flirted with strangers to feel alive. One woman, a lawyer named Elena with laugh lines and a divorce under her belt, bought me around and listened as I spilled fragments. Sounds like love, she said, her hand on my knee. The messy kind worth fighting for. I nodded, but the fight had drained out. Frankie texted once. Come home. Please. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then deleted the thread. Winter gripped the city like a grudge. Snow blanketing the brownstones in false purity. Christmas came and went, me alone in a diner on Flatbush, picking at eggs over easy, watching families hustle gifts through the slush. New Year's Eve found me at a queer house party in Crown Heights, bass thumping through my ribs, bodies grinding in the haze of fairy lights and poppers. I kissed a girl with blue hair, her tongue tasting like vodka and regret. But it was Frankie's face I saw when I closed my eyes. January thawed the ice but not my resolve. A package arrived at Maya's. Frankie's manuscript, bound in blue cardstock. Title scrawled in her looping script. Echoes in the margins. A note tucked inside. You were right. It's me. Read it. For us. I devoured it in one sitting. The futon creaking under me as pages turned. It was us, woven through the bridge walk, the laundromat kiss, the fire escape confessions. But threaded darker the doubts, the pull toward Riley as a mirror to her insecurities, the fear that loving me meant settling for less. The last chapter ended open, and in the quiet beside her, I found the words I'd been chasing all along. Tears soaked the cover. I called her at 3 a.m., voice thick. Frankie. Jordan. Her exhale was a sob. Where are you? We met at our spot. The bridge at dawn. The city waking gray and forgiving. She was there. Bundled in my old parka. Hair wild from the wind. No words at first, just arms wrapping. Bodies aligning like puzzle pieces long separated. I'm sorry, she whispered into my collarbone. Riley was a ghost of what I thought I needed. But you're the quiet that warms me. Pulled back, searching her eyes. And the trust? Can we rebuild? She nodded. Fierce. Piece by jagged piece. We tried. We tried. Therapy sessions in a cramped office off Atlantic, where the counselor, a non-binary NB with a buzzcut and kind eyes, unpacked our baggage like fragile heirlooms. Date nights enforced. Walks in the botanical garden, her hand in mine, pointing out camellias that bloomed defiant in the chill. I redesigned her book cover as a gift, bold lines evoking the skyline we'd claimed as ours. But betrayal's echo is long. In March, Riley emailed Frankie an offer. Co-author a travel memoir, funded by her gallery connections. It could be our road trip, Frankie showed me. Excitement warring with caution. What do you think? I swallowed the bile. If it's what you want, go. But come back to me. She chose us, deleting the thread with a decisive swipe. You're my horizon, Jord. Not some detour. Spring unfurled tentative. Cherry blossoms dusting the park like confetti from a half-hearted parade. Frankie's novel found a small press. The kind that championed voices like hers, queer, introspective, unapologetic. Launch party at a bookstore in Park Slope. Wine flowing. Readings that left the room hushed. I stood in the back, heart swelling as she dedicated it to the woman who taught me silence speaks loudest. Summer hummed back. Humid promises renewed. We took that road trip. After all, not with Riley's shadow, but our own. A rented camper van rattling south through the Appalachians, banjos twanging from porches as we chased fireflies in Tennessee fields. Nights parked under stars thick as regrets undone. Her head on my chest, fingers tracing the scars on my knuckles from a childhood fight I never won. In New Orleans, jazz spilling from French Quarter doorways, we danced slow in a courtyard bar. Her laughter bubbling like the hurricanes they served sweet and strong. This is it, she murmured, swaying to the clarinet's wail. The life we build. But climax waits for no idol. Crashed in August. Back in Brooklyn. A call from Frankie's mother. Stage 3 breast cancer. The kind that spreads quiet until it's everywhere. Frankie flew home to Boston the next day. Me trailing a week later after wrapping a project. The O'Malley house was a whirlwind of rosaries and casseroles. Aunts clucking in the kitchen. Uncles nursing beers in the den. Mrs. O'Malley Eileen lay in the guest room. Frail but fierce. Her eyes the same green as her daughter's. Frankie barely slept. Hovering like a ghost. I cooked what I could. Collards from a recipe Mama left scribbled in a cookbook. Cornbread that drew wary smiles. One night, as thunder rumbled over the harbor, Eileen called me in alone. You're the one. Then, her voice was papery, but sharp. The girl who's got my Frankie twisted up. I perched on the bed's edge. Hands clasped. Yes, ma'am. I love her. She studied me. For drip beeping soft. Love's a thief. Jordan. Steals your breath. Your pride. But if it's real, it gives back tenfold. Pause. Her hand frail on mine. Don't let her run from it. Or you. I nodded. Throat tight. I won't. Eileen passed in October. Leaves turning gold like a farewell. The funeral was a blur of black veils and Ave Maria. Frankie reciting a eulogy that gutted us all, words of a mother's quiet strength. The love that bent but never broke. In the cemetery, rain slicking the gravel, she collapsed against me, sobs racking her frame. I can't lose you too. You won't, I vowed, holding her as the ground drank our tears. Winter wrapped us gentle that year. Grief a blanket heavy but shared. We scattered Eileen's ashes in the Charles River at dawn. Frankie's voice steady as she read from her novel. In the margins, we find the map home. Back in Brooklyn, we adopted a rescue mutt. A scruffy terrier mix named Echo, who curled between us on the couch. A living reminder of presence. By spring, the scars had softened to stories. Frankie's book hit shelves. Reviews praising its tender ferocity. Readings drawing crowds that spilled into the streets. I landed a full-time gig at the label. My designs gracing vinyl sleeves that spun in lofts from LA to London. We talked future, not if, but how. A down payment on a house in Ditmas Park. Maybe kids someday via IVF or fostering. A life stitched from our patches. One evening in June, as fireflies danced in the yard of a rented cabin upstate, Frankie knelt in the grass. A ring glinting in her palm, simple gold band etched with wildflowers. Jordan Hayes. You've been my quiet storm. Marry me? Let's make forever from the silence. Tears blurred the stars. Yes. Yes. Our wedding was small. humanistic in its rawness. A backyard affair in Prospect Park, officiated by Maya under a chuppah of woven branches. Vows exchanged in the dappled light. Mine promising to hold her through tempests, hers vowing to chase horizons together. Rings slid on, cool and binding, as echo barked approval and guests cheered with craft beers and queer anthems blaring from a Bluetooth speaker. Years folded forward, not without friction, arguments over whose turn to walk the dog. Late nights when work pulled us thin, but laced with the deep affection that betrayal had forged stronger. Frankie published a second book, this one co-written with me. Illustrations bleeding into prose like our lives intertwined. We fostered two girls from the system, teens with eyes like wary deer, teaching them that home wasn't a place but a choice. On quiet nights, when the city hushed and rain pattered the fire escape once more, I'd sit silently beside her on that same worn couch, her head on my shoulder, echo snoring at our feet. That quietness, it warmed me completely, a hearth against the world's chill, proof that love, in all its American grit and grace, could mend what it broke.